In spite of the availability of automation, production operations in many companies still suffer from problems relating to paper-based documentation, inconsistent manual order execution, traceability issues, and limited visibility into critical areas like stock usage. These problems result in reduced throughput, lower quality, and higher production costs. In the next few minutes, I'll provide an introduction to Aspen Production Execution Manager, a part of Waspentech's manufacturing execution system, and a software system designed to solve these and other problems in production operations. MES systems have a long track record of solving problems like these since they became common in the late 90s. These systems feature built-for-purpose data historians, which are data repositories designed to deal with the large volume of time-stamped process data and associated event information. Complementing the time series storage are modules that provide analytics and visualization, performance monitoring, plant scheduling, and our topic at hand, production execution management. Aspen One MES follows the ISA S95 guideline for MES systems. ISA S95 defines a method of interfacing production control systems and enterprise systems. S95 was cooperatively developed by a number of companies with the goal of standardizing on terminology and methods to make integration successful. These elements work to eliminate confusion across your network of suppliers. Aspen Production Execution Manager provides a number of functions including definition management. Recipes are examples of product definitions, but so are standard operating procedures and assembly instructions, which are not specific for batch processes. The next function is resource management, and these functions drive the allocation of 4 classes of resources: personnel, equipment, material and energy, and process segments. Next is production tracking. These functions track what was made and the resources actually used. Maintenance of production information is centralized to provide greater control and availability of the records. Electronic records are managed and controlled through Level 3 systems with audit trail, access control, backup, and ERP connectivity. Data collection is a cornerstone of MES functionality and provides full traceability. It also helps us to understand how the plant responds to control commands. Data collection is critical to regulatory compliance and to understanding how production assets are utilized. And as you'll see in a minute, Aspen Production Execution Manager automates the collection and storage of all pertinent production data, and while APIM is not exclusively for batch processing, it does include the capability to construct the complete batch data records. The last major functional group is dispatching, where orders are moved through the various workstations. APIM maintains a full audit trail of where work was performed, along with the other data that provides full traceability and auditing capabilities. While MES systems have been around for a couple of decades, never have they been more beneficial. Our production environments are more complex than ever. We have greater regulatory compliance hurdles than ever before. Operators can quickly become overwhelmed when they're not supported with appropriate production automation. Let's look at a quick demonstration and see how Aspen Production Execution Manager can help you improve production operations. Here's the thick client interface for APIM. The open dialog shows part of the basic phase library. The status of the basic phases are tracked to ensure that they're ready for deployment. Clicking on one of the basic phases brings up the detailed data for that basic phase. That detail includes key dates in the creation of the basic phase. Clicking on the Basic Phases tab shows another view of the basic phases in the library. There are several other tabs to asset other facets of the definition. One of the detail elements can be scripts that interact with the operator and guide them through the process. I said earlier that the recipes are made from a combination of basic phases and recipe procedures that tie it all together. I can open the tools for managing recipes, and as I did with the basic phases, I can click on any recipe and see the combination of the procedures that constitute that recipe. A few other things to mention. APIM provides tools to define and manage workstations in the production areas. I can scroll through to see a list of how our workstation is configured and what process types are supported for a given workstation. Let's take a look at a production order. There are several ways to access order information. Maybe the best place to start is with the list of current orders. From this dialog, I can interact with an existing order, or I can create a new order. Let's do that and see how it gets created and executed. I'll choose the option of creating the order from an RPL script. That brings up the order creation form. I'll enter just a few fields to illustrate the concepts, and I'll create the order in the compounding area. The code field is the data that will identify the order. The description can be in any identifying descriptive text, and I'll denote the master recipe being used for the order. Next, I'll enter the production operations step and the article, which is a descriptor that identifies the product, like a product code. Next, I'll enter a batch number and then denote the quantity in units of measure for the order. The last field I'll enter will be the work center where the order is to be fulfilled, in this case, line 8. I'll make this order auto-activate so it's available as soon as I complete the form. I'm doing this order creation manually, and the system is set up to capture audit reasons for activities like that. I'll just skip that for our demo. That brings us back to the orders dialog, and I can see the order we just created. From here, I'm going to use an existing order to demonstrate how the system interacts with operators. I'll select an order from the list by double-clicking, and that will open the Unit Procedures dialog. I can see my first unit task in this recipe is a tank operation. I click on that, and it shows several unit procedures. When I click on the equipment selection, it drills down further into a step that presents the operator with instructions and the actual equipment selection task. When I click on the introduction phase, it will open a menu of actions, and I'll select Execute. This list changes color to show that that step has been completed. And then when I go back up a level, I see the next step is colored green, and again I click to go one level deeper and execute the startup checklist. I mentioned earlier that APIM can interact with the DCS. Here's an example where I ask the operator to check and see that the DCS is ready to begin. And I check to see if the tank is ready and denote that I've reviewed the SOPs. When I click that last button, it brings up a list of available SOPs, and I'll select one. I'm just going to pop open a Word window to illustrate how a document might be presented. It could be Word or PDF. For this step, we're asking for a formal sign-off regarding the completion of the step. I enter a user ID and password to complete the step. That brings me back to the execution list, and we move to the next step, the startup instruction. Again, I'll use the Actions menu to execute the step. As before, I'm presented with instructions on how to proceed, and I enter my user ID and password. This requirement is configurable depending on your documentation and traceability needs. So let's start to summarize all of this. From the demo, you could see how APIM supports consistency in execution by guiding operators through production operations. It provides guidance and instructions for each element of the production recipe. As I showed in the demo, there are full-featured auditing functions covering all aspects of recipe execution. The basic phase libraries of pre-built functions make it easier to develop new recipes. Pushing new recipes to multiple sites is also made easier by the use of shared recipes within the libraries. I showed an example of manually collecting data via operator screens, and I also showed how APIM can interact with the DCS to gather data automatically. Many companies are truly international, with multiple production sites in multiple countries. When that occurs, language is always a potential issue. The ability to localize solution to address different language needs makes APIM a true global competitive advantage. All of these capabilities can be harnessed to provide production with unparalleled ability to guide operators through today's complex production processes and keep quality product flowing with solid margins. Aspen Production Execution Manager is a must-have technology to compete in today's fast-moving markets.
Thank you, and don't forget to join the Aspentech community by going to aspentech.com/community.